I speak, I begin to remember. Or when I remember, I begin to speak. It is a difficult process and a long story. Sometimes I prefer watching the sunlight move across the floor. Silence has been a good friend to me over the years, though not in a religious, prayerful way. Not in the way my mother would have liked. Andrea was used to giving up her life for another, to care for and make room for the beating heart of another human being. She knew how to put herself aside without extinguishing herself altogether. She had this fire in her, something I could not touch. Her fire used to shake me out of my torpor. It was as though this word had come alive inside my heart and inside my gut. Torpor overtook me as if it were a living being, some entity that wished to empty me of all light, all gladness. As a child, I had been able to look at a horse and know gladness deep inside me. Something about the shape and the breath and the presence of the animal told me that life was good, that my body was worthy, that my heart was beating for a reason. But later, this gladness left me and was replaced with torpor, and Andrea was the only person who was able to shake me momentarily free of it. Horses can still bring me back to myself, but there are no horses here. It was my mother who said to me, "The horse mocks at fear and is not frightened," and it was the only time I felt understood by her. It was probably the only time she had tried to understand me. She knew that I stopped by the horses on the way home from school all those years, and so she knew that they were a comfort to me. Still, those were words from the Bible. They were not hers. It is true that I could smell Andrea all the way from this dank, inhospitable room that stifled me. I could smell her over and above the stench of my own excrement in the tin bucket. It was only a matter of time before the door would swing open and I would walk out again to find her. And when I found her, they would have to eat their words. 2. It was early because the light was only just coming in through the slit, and I was drifting in and out of sleep. I heard no knock and the door opened on its own, with no need to unlock or push, even though it was a heavy iron door with hinges the size of crowbars. A man who introduced himself as Martin, his name tag read M. Payne, appeared at the door and led me down a series of corridors to a basement. Everything was painted white, with a faint smell of fresh paint, and there were 4 doors, all of them dark blue, almost black. Martin stood for a while as though he could not decide which door to open. Then he hurried me outside. The woods were darker than I remembered and dense. Daylight had not yet fully penetrated the crisscross of branches, and the place felt inert, more plantation than woodland. Birds were calling, tits, wood pigeons, and everything was wet from recent rain. As I stepped forwards, mud and leaves reluctantly let go of my boots. There was something erotic about it. I understood about mud and reluctance and rain. I headed straight for the silver birch, our tree. The sun was beginning to shine between clouds, and the bark glowed. One white incisor in a forest of teeth, that's what Andrea called it. She was bound to be somewhere near here. This was where we met on Fridays, after she had finished with her mother and I had completed the week's story. A single silver birch in the middle of larch and pine, and the big car wash brushes of spruce. The stories I wrote were a waste of time. Nobody understood them. I wanted to say something new and present readers with a challenge, but if I wanted publication, I had to churn out a series of stock images and ideas that people could take comfort from, or use to explain the world away. The only acceptance for publication I received was from some marginal magazine called Sea Glass and the local Courier, where the guidelines for publication were